To order the October 12th, 2020 public meeting of the Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners. We will begin by saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of thanks for members of the armed forces, especially those in harm's way, first responders, healthcare workers, food supply workers, our municipal staff and employees who are helping our community and country through these trying times. Let us begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll begin by reading the HUD statement. Whitehall Township has an obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and to review all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. This includes taking meaningful actions that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics. The township and its land use decisions does not discriminate against persons based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, or familial status, and reviews all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. Public comments made on the basis of bias and stereotype concerning people within these protected classes will not be taken into consideration by the township in its deliberations. Mr. Secretary, will you please poll the board for an audio record of members present?
Why don't we just do that with the motion to approve the minutes? It becomes superfluous if we do it twice in a row.
All right, just so that we have a record of it. All right, approval of the minutes. There's a motion to approve the minutes of the following meeting, regular public meeting of September 14th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Marks.
And we have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Comments from the board? Being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Attia?
Yes.
Commissioner D?
Aye.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker? Aye. President Ginder?
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Next is courtesy of the floor. Is there anybody in the chat room or wishing to speak from the public? Zach?
All of the questions I got, Commissioner Ginder, were related to specific agenda items. So if you want to give it 10 seconds, if anybody does have a question, write it in the Q&A or the chat, but otherwise we'll just unmute people as we go through.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything. We could probably move on.
Moving on, public hearing and voting on ordinances. Bill number 26-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 15, Section 37 of the 2006 Codified Ordinances of Whitehall Township, establishing a 35-foot length no parking zone along the west side of Coons Lane at its main street, State Route 329 corner in the Egypt area of the Township of Whitehall, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, D.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, Marks.
Discussion from the board.
I have a question, Commissioner D.
Go ahead.
I tried to ask this last week during the workshop, and unfortunately it's having some audio problems. Is 35 feet enough? I understand it's for the fire trucks turning in. I'm just curious, why not that whole side of the block? I want to make sure 35 is enough. That's my question.
Well, I went up there, Mick, and to be perfectly honest with you, parking in that neighborhood, the only parking they really have is on the rear in their garage areas. And some people do use that parking. And I understand from our firefighters that that is adequate for them to swing that corner and they don't have any problems with it. It's more for people that park too close to 329, and this gives them adequate swing rate so they can clear that, Coons Lane right there.
Right. I just want to make sure it's enough for them. That's all.
Yeah, it's just that we don't want to take too much parking for the neighborhood because they use that for overflow parking because they really don't have any parking other than the rear of their properties. I think it's adequate. I think it's fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public, or Zach, is anybody in the chat room?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
and President Ginder.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 27, 2020. An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the installation of fencing for the cement playground, basketball, and tennis courts for the Recreation Bureau of the Township of Whitehall. Bid 2020-07 in accordance with section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Fisher.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Warren.
Discussion from the board. Any discussion from the board? Comments from the public or anybody in the chat room, Zach?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
President Ginder.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 28-2020, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the purchase and installation of new financial management software for the Whitehall Township Municipal Building in accordance with section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Marks.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Sloniker.
Comments from the board?
I have two quick questions. One is maybe to Jack. Does the software have accounting, auditing capabilities? And the other has our solicitor reviewed the contract in detail.
I didn't get that first question.
It was related to auditing. Does it have robust auditing capabilities internal?
Oh, yes. And we have Debbie Bowman and Lenore Brazier who are on the committee. Perhaps Deb can elaborate a little bit on it. Zach, if you can unmute her.
Yep, Debbie, you should be unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it does. I'm familiar with another pilot product, and it was great for auditing. Hello?
We can hear you, Debbie.
Okay.
Jeff, you're muted if you're speaking.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Joe. Then my second question was related to the solicitor, whether he reviewed the contract in detail, making sure we had all our I's dotted and T's crossed. And I guess the third question for Jack was the escalation. Is there escalation in the annual fees for that? And do we understand those escalations?
there were no escalations to fixed costs based on the number of components or programs that you have. So that, no, there was nothing there. And obviously the township contract is the one that gets signed. And that's going to be the one that we enter into the agreement with. And if there's any documents from Tyler, those would be reviewed by the solicitor before we would consummate and issue the purchase order.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to add, like the modules, you know, we're not going to implement everything at one time. So as the modules get entered, you know, executed, that's when we would be paying.
I guess I just want to ensure that we have a complete package and not we get modules 1 and 2 and then have a hiccup with 3 and we have a partially built package. That's all I cared about, that it was contract was buttoned up so that we're protected and the taxpayers are protected.
We did, I'll tell you what, Jeff, we did our research and I did a very thorough reference check and review of the software, and I feel very confident with this selection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did
Any other comments from the board?
I also checked into this. I talked to the people down at the county because when I was down there as controller, we used Tyler and they were very happy with the one side that administered the courts system. They said it was very good. But then when you moved in over to what the fiscal department was using, they had a lot of different problems. And I'm going like, okay, that's different than when I talked to Debbie Bowman. She worked in Allentown and was using this all the time. And then she said she talked to the people in South Whitehall and that they were very favorable. And what I found out is there's so many different types of what they sell, what programs for this, for that, and whatnot. And I know that Debbie and the committee with Jack and all, they did a real good job. It's what you do when you're trying to find out what you're going to be the ultimate user of. And it appeared that down at the county, it got into when they needed some specific help on some different parts of it, that they were always getting extra fees charged and whatnot. And I'm making that assumption, that's what Jeff just brought up, to make sure that we weren't going to have any extra costs that come into this later on. And each place had a different name. I know Debbie down at Allentown, it was called Eden. I think out in Southwood, it's called Eunice, and I have no idea what it's called down at the county. But Tyler has also just recently purchased one of the financial things that they use from a different company. And this stuff is scattered around. And I know that everybody that used it here with Debbie and I'm sorry, but I can't think of the girl's name came over from South Whitehall, that they were very happy with it. And this is just something that I know that when we had the interaction last week on Monday, I think that's where all of this potential problems came up, that we just were to be made aware that possibilities exist, that sometimes you're not going to get the backup that you need at times from these people. And it seemed like charging extra was part of the problem that they had, and that's why they went away from them down there. But like I said, I don't see anything, because like I said, I know that Jack and Debbie have certainly done their due diligence, and they're the ones that have to work with it, and they're used. I know Debbie's used to it, so I'm expecting this to be okay.
Any other comments from the board? Anybody in the chat room? There for public? Sounds like somebody's trying
I
to.
do have one question from Jim Arms. What's that?
It just sounded like somebody was trying to talk. Who do you have a question from, Zach?
Yeah, sorry. It's breaking up a little bit on my end, Phil, but maybe that's just me. Jim Arms, 1035 High Street, Pottstown. And I think most of these questions were answered already, but it might be for Debbie or the deputy mayor. But what company is being awarded, and how much does the contract cost?
Well, as it's right now with what the township is putting forward, the cost as it is $54,370.
Does that answer the questions?
I suppose so. Jim, if it doesn't, I guess let me know. But that was the only question I had in the Q&A.
All right, there being no other questions, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Nay.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher
Aye.
and Commissioner Ginder.
Yes.
Bill passes 6 ayes, 1 nay.
Bill number 29, 2020, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for purchase of body cameras for the Whitehall Township Police Department. In accordance with section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion, Fisher.
Do we have a second?
I'll second D.
Comments from the board?
Quick question. What was the grant value on that?
This is Chief Marks. The grant value was approximately $44,000.
Work. Thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Quick question, Fisher. Have we had them before, or is this our first time with them? Body cameras.
This would be the first time that we had them. We've had cameras in the actual police cars themselves.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Commissioner Sloniker. The use of them, do you have a specific time that they're going to be on? And the only reason I bring this up is obviously with today's society here, you hear that, well, that camera wasn't working and this and whatnot. I don't know what rules that you've established for the use of the cameras.
Yeah, there's specific policies in place. They've been vetted through the PHU Police Association, also the district attorney, and guidance through the Pennsylvania State Police.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Or is anybody in the chat room, Zach?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
and President Ginder.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 30, 2020, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for purchase of 3 2021 Dodge Charger vehicles for the Police Patrol Division in accordance with Section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Marks.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Warren.
Comments from the board?
Yeah, it's a kind of redundant question, but in the budget, we had 5 vehicles budgeted for the year. This acquisition would take it up to 6, and we have discretionary funds to add to the 6th vehicle, Jack?
Yes. Well, not
Great.
discretionary, but they stayed under budget with what we've bought.
And it's a redundant question, but I thought I asked since we're off plan.
And I,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
if I can add in, Commissioner, I believe that some of the approvals for this year, specifically the one that you're talking about, was actually a budgeted car from the 2019 budget that wasn't able to be ordered because of issues with, I think it was Ford's production line.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Zach, is there anybody in the chat room for public comment on this?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioners D,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Marks. Oh, I'm sorry. Where am I at? Tia, Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
and President Ginder.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 31, 2020. This is a first hearing and no vote will be taken. An ordinance of the Township of Whitehall authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds or a general obligation note in the maximum aggregate principal, a amount of $8,700,000 for the purpose of funding capital projects, including the construction of a new police station and other capital projects of the township, including additions, alterations, renovations, improvements to, and fixturing and equipping of certain township facilities and grounds. Moving on to public hearing and voting on resolutions. Resolution number 3135, a resolution conditionally approving the minor subdivision land development plan of 3332 and 3330 East Columbia Street, index number 1968-20. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. Sloniker.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Discussion from the board. Any discussion from the board?
Real quick, I think we asked about trash for this house in the back, like where they're going to be able to put their trash,
Well,
like garbage cans.
I had 2 questions that were just a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Number one was an alley. Is that unnamed alley going to be named now so that rear lot has a true address with the frontage type street? And where will the trash and garbage be put out?
This is Frank. Zach, can you unmute Rob Pelagian? He's the preparer of the plan. He can answer those questions.
Yes. Rob's unmuted.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Rob.
To answer your question, Phil, the trash is picked up on East Columbia Street now, and will continue to be picked up. I was out there actually this past week, setting the new iron pins on the corners, and I personally saw there's that each dwelling unit has its own robo can and recycling can. And my understanding is that they're taken out to Columbia Street to be picked up out there. In addition, the owner of the property, Mr. Hill, stated to me that he has had a 20-foot box truck back in there, so there's no problem with a trash truck being able to get back there. So,
But their trash currently is picked up on
Columbia Street, and it'll
Columbia
continue to be
Street.
picked up there. Yeah.
Yeah, see, my only question with all of this is, let's say lot 2 at some time in the future gets sold off.
Mhm.
And there becomes a new owner to lot 2, and lot 1 would have a different owner.
Yep.
At that point, lot 2, to give it a proper address, they'd have to walk up through lot 1 to get their mail, take their trash out, or anything else, unless they
No,
go through the unnamed alleys.
Yeah, they can go up. They can go up the alley, no problem. There's plenty of room there.
That was my question. Why not at this point? Is it worthwhile at this point to put names on those alleys and give this lot 2 a proper address? That it has frontage on a street.
Well, I don't believe that they qualify as streets per se, according to the rules of the township, because the street is defined in Whitehall Township as something having a right-of-way greater than 24 feet. So they're never going to become streets unless they're widened. The right-of-way of the alley running from East Columbia Street back is 20, and in the alley along what would be considered the frontage of 3330 is only 15 feet wide. So neither one of those qualifies as a street. As far as naming them, that's up to the township if they want to name them. There's no names in the records that I have in my office or that the township has, to the best of my knowledge. So, and everybody has known that rear house since it was constructed. Well, the old house was constructed years and years ago as 3330.
Yeah.
So,
And I understand that, but the only question I had in my mind was, if these 2 lots were to be sold to 2 individual buyers down the road, that there'd be proper addressing and mail service and everything else to these two separate lots.
I understand that there is a mailbox in front of the 3330, or there's both mailboxes are out on Columbia Street. There's 2 separate mailboxes. There's no easements. I understand that was a question. There are no easements proposed. There is nothing existing for the movement of the trash cans and/or people across lot 1 from lot 2. They can utilize the public right-of-way. So.
All right. Well, if I'm the only one questioning this, I'm not going to push the issue.
I do have a comment or question, and it's primarily related to EMS 911. If that's a separate dwelling, maybe more than 1 unit, I'm not sure. I'd like to see us make sure that we have adequate designation so that if there's a 911 call, they know how to get to that house.
Well, I can answer that, because what's going to happen, Commissioner Warren, is that each lot will have a new PIN, a new parcel identification number. And with the enhanced 911 system in Lehigh County, that's how all the first responders utilize, and they have their GPS that will take them to that parcel identification number, that PIN, because that PIN is not just some number created out of random. That's actually geodetic coordinates. So each lot will have that PIN ability. In addition, it is only a single dwelling back there. There is an attached garage, but it is only a single dwelling unit. In fact, that's all there is on this property. Currently, there are 2 existing single-family dwellings. At one time prior to this owner, the front was actually a 2-unit dwelling. There were 3 dwelling units on this property at one time, but he constructed it. And Commissioner Ginder, the reason for this subdivision is exactly what you're saying. It's to be able to separate the 2 parcels at some point. So I tell you that Mr. Hill's mother lives in the back property, in the back house, and Mr. Hill lives in the front, and he's planning on staying there. In fact, when I spoke with him earlier today, he was asking me about putting a small pool in the backyard for next year. So he's not going anywhere.
Well, and this is Commissioner Sloniker. I understand where Phil's going from, and what you're saying, that sounds okay and all that. It's just that in 25 years from now, when that's sold, or they want to just sell the one part and everything, that's where a lot of these problems arise. And again, I see where Phil wants to address that now rather than having a future board have to possibly do something, or the people have trouble getting something with their title or whatnot, just because it's not been solved yet. And I think that's where Phil's coming from.
I don't see any, I can't see, and I'm not an attorney. I only have 35 years in as a surveyor, but I can't see how there would be any issues as far as title work goes. The title has nothing to do with where the property is located. So I don't see that. As far as getting the mail, as I said, there is a mailbox on East Columbia Street, and it's actually sitting at the corner of the unnamed alley and East Columbia Street. And that mailbox services 3330. So, again, that's an outside agency that the post office, if they want to have the mailbox located there, they'll where they want the mailbox. As far as trash collection, we have reached out again to Public Works, and we're awaiting a response from them whether they're going to want the trash picked up separately once these properties are, and when I say separately, at a different location than where it's picked up now, once these properties are separated. So
once the properties are separated, I would believe they would generate 2 trash bills.
They do already, Phil.
Okay.
Because they're based on units, and they each have their own robo-cans. As I said before, there are 4 cans out there right now. There's 2 of the maroon trash containers and 2 of the recycling containers. And I will myself.
I missed that, Rob. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the public or anything in the chat room on this, Zach?
Phil?
There are none other than Rob.
Mayor Herrickle calling.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I was just wondering if we knew, Jack, whether or not they have 2 sets of containers and are only paying for the extra $30, I guess, to have the second sets of containers. Are they paying a total of twice the normal amount? I guess we'd have to look at that.
Yeah, that wouldn't hold us up.
Doesn't have to hold anything up.
That wouldn't hold us up voting on this, because whichever way the vote would go on this particular issue, that can be addressed later if they are only paying 1 garbage fee.
Yep.
Any other questions from the public?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please call the board.
Commissioner Slaughter.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye. Yes. Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Tia. Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Warren. Commissioner Warren. Commissioner Warren again.
Aye.
You're muted.
Okay.
Aye.
Commissioner D.
Aye.
Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
And President Ginder.
Yes.
Resolution passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3136, a resolution adopting escrow reimbursement policies and agreements for subdivision and/or land development and for matters other than subdivision and/or land development. Do I have a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Marks.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Comments from the board? Any comments from the board? Comments from the public or out of the chat room, Zach?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Waronker, aye. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Attia,
Yes.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
President Ginder.
Yes.
Resolution passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3137, a resolution requesting a Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Commonwealth Finance Authority loan share account grant for the renovation of the historic Mickley Pride Farm. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
I'll second D.
Comments from the board?
Yeah, simply put, this is a grant application to the Commonwealth Finance Authority to go after gaming funds to start the renovations to that property that hasn't been touched for a number of years. The grant would be written flexible so that we could do some work on the little house and on the larger house. The 1861 house or 1761 house is more conducive to some other private grants out there, like the Century Fund and maybe the Trexler Trust grant, whereas the gaming fund is probably more applicable to the 1835 house. As I stated last week, the small house that was John Jacob Mickley property, he was credited with transporting Liberty Bell up from Philadelphia to Allentown in 1777. His brother, Peter Mickley, I think he was a survivor of the Indian Massacre and ran down from the Mickley property via Fort Deschler to that property. And I think the 1835 house was his. So I asked for favorable consideration to approve this so that we could formalize a committee and fine-tune the grant application and submit it. It's going to take 6 to 8 months after submission before they approve it, and it probably won't be till the following year until work is done on it. So if we pass on this opportunity, it just pushes the window out 2 more years, and I don't think we could have waited that long.
Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I have one. It's Mark's. My only concern is, my understanding is there's a $200,000 grant available, correct?
We're going to request that much. We're
Okay.
focused on the phase 1 that buttons up the exterior, does the windows, does a run of the work. Some of the fine tooth stuff like ADA access and stuff like that could come in phase 2 and through other grant sources.
Okay, now you indicated that you were going to apply for $200,000, but you felt that you'd only be successful with getting a $100,000 grant.
It's a coin toss. $100,000 would be awesome.
All right, here's my concern. My concern is if we did secure this first $100,000, or be it a little more or a little less, we don't know which way it's going to go. I don't think anybody can really tell us at this point how successful we'll be at, garnering the grant. My concern is if we get this grant money, apply it to these properties, and we're not successful in the future gaining any more grants for this, how is this project going to get completed without public monies? And currently, with the pandemic, we really don't know where we're going to land in the future. The next couple of years are going to be very trying on Whitehall Township, our finances, until we can actually figure out how much impact this pandemic had on our financial status and our tax collection, being business privilege and all taxes that, it's going to impact all taxes across the board. My concern is there potentially won't be any public money available to put towards the project. We just raised people's taxes a mill to support this public safety building. Had we known this pandemic was coming, we certainly would have not moved forward with that. We have an additional $400,000 in pension liability this year alone on our police pension. My concern is we're going to tax people out of Whitehall Township. It's very honorable what everyone's doing here, and I don't disagree with it. And I think historic preservation is a very important part of the fabric of our community and our life. But at this time and place, I just don't know how we can justify this and potentially impact our tax base and our employees as a whole. My big concern is if business privilege tax and EIT comes in much lower than we anticipate, the last thing I want to do is see anyone lose their livelihoods. In all honesty, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to continue. We don't know how long our tax base is going to be impacted by this. And at this point, like I said, once again, I admire what everybody's trying to do here. And if it made sense at this time, I would be fully on board. I just can't at this time support it. That's all I have.
I would add, Joe, that leading into this, and I mentioned it numerous times, I've been looking for ways to stretch the public dollar, applying for grants to $62,000, $500 for a police vehicle and license plate reader. I laid the groundwork in 2018 with the RCAP itemization that led to a submission in 2019. Without that legwork, we would never have been able to apply for RCAP, and that led to $1 million. And this is going to take it's going to take people involved in the community. There's some people that would want to sponsor windows. I'm being one of them. But I think this grant, whatever we land, if we land half the grant that we're requesting, it goes a long way into making that building accessible. The Grimm House wasn't built overnight, restored overnight. The Gristmill that was pushed back on many years ago was restored to a fabulous place. And people don't move to Whitehall because of our traffic and our commercial. They move here for quality of life. And with all the development that's been proposed in the farmland that's left, this is something that's worth preserving, in my opinion. And if we're that dire, maybe we shouldn't be moving forward with the renovation of the 11-year-old renovated administration building. I mean, I think we're looking to the future. Where do we go in the future? And I think, we're hoping that the pandemic doesn't last forever, but, earned income tax isn't as far off as we once thought. Business privilege tax, I don't know if we know that yet. But like I said, we're not requesting the public to spend $1 tomorrow. This grant opportunity, there are I do expect that we need to fix the spouting that has not been hanging for a number of years now. That is the root of some of the concern right now. You take a brand new house and you let the rain spout drop at the basement, damage brick coat or anything like that, you don't button up that up, it leads to a greater problem. So I think it's a manageable project right now if we pursue it. If we wait 3-5 years, it's not. And it's like lighting a match and just waiting for something to happen. So like I said, this is I can't say we're not going to spend any time there or a single penny, but like I said, I've been working to stretch the public dollar, and I'm for the taxpayer, and that's why I've been doing it. But I think, we just can't walk away from making quality of life. County grants are available for quality of life grants. That's another avenue. So there's 3 other avenues besides this one grant to go after. And it's kind of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You have to start somewhere. And I think this is a great opportunity to lay a good foundation. And there's a number of people in the community that are eager to make this happen, but they've kind of felt that they've had to stay back from it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
Yes, real quick, Commissioner Fisher. So I definitely understand. I have a lot of concerns about COVID, about the tax base. I do personally still have concerns about the long-term utility of the site. However, I do believe in this instance that there does seem to be some community interest involvement. If this committee that Jeff is talking about can pull itself together and work outside of the public funds for the moment, I think in this instance, it may be a project that can go forward and they can have a chance to prove themselves. But coming down the road, coming down the pike, as Commissioner Mark said, if we don't know what the situation with COVID is, some harder choices might have to be made down the road on this property. But I believe at this moment, they may have merit to at least be given an opportunity, so long as it's not necessarily impacting the public funds at this moment. I can't guarantee how I would vote down the road, but I think they might deserve a chance tonight. And we'll just see how things go. So that's all I have to say.
Any other comments from the board?
I have one comment, Commissioner D. I went to college in the city of Boston, a city that preserves its history. It's done magnificently. Whether you're a kid, young adult, or adult, there's so much, if you like history like I do, there's so many things to see there. I lived and worked in the city of Philadelphia that did a terrible job preserving its history. My brother-in-law came in from Oklahoma. I gave him a tour around, and I had to tell him that, no, that's, that was knocked down. This is a replica. This is, no, we knocked that building down. My concern is if this building goes, it's gone. It can't be, that's it. It's gone. So I think this is a good start. I don't see anything wrong with applying for the grant. And that's my biggest fear. I understand what Commissioner Marks is saying. I have concerns as well. But if we let this building deteriorate any farther, once it's gone, and we can't preserve history. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Yeah, I have some comments. I supported and voted for the purchase of this property a few years ago. Preservation of the land as open space was the original intent. Its location to the rail trail and Copley Creek were considered its main assets. I do not oppose some type of historical restoration on this property. However, I do oppose the present secretive ongoing process. For over 1 year, I asked for the township inspection reports on the property and finally received them in September of this year. The initial report I was given was 1 page. After more prodding, I finally got 3 pages. The report was only on the larger house. The dates of the inspection were 6/24/2019, 7/17/2019, 8/7/2019 by our third-party township inspector key codes. I won't read all the comments as the commissioners were copied on these, but I wish to read one statement from the inspector from the 7th of August, 2019. Note, nobody is permitted in this structure because of the amount of mold present. Nobody from Key Codes, that's our inspection agency, will enter this structure until the mold issue is no longer a health risk to anyone entering the building. Another secret was the establishment of the community garden. The Board of Commissioners was never informed of this. We learned of it in the newspaper. I truly believe the garden to be a noble cause. I support the effort totally on the garden. However, the secretive approach is not how to go about it. Many more volunteers would help if they were informed and a proper committee were established of civic-minded residents. A few years ago, a feasibility study was ordered and paid for by I'm not sure who. Approximately $7,400 was paid. The township received nothing for a few years, and when the board learned of this money spent with no response, we asked the administration to research this issue. Recently, we learned that the money was just recently recovered with no report. In April 2020, the board received a solicited and paid for guidance estimate for work to be done on the large house only. The board did not request this bid. Not quite sure who did. Note, the smaller house is the historically correct structure, and no requests were made for this structure. Total bid was approximately $233,000 plus $51,000 for add-ons. Note, some pricing was an allowance only. Last week, I mentioned prevailing wages were not used on the quote, so he scrambled this past week to update the quote to approximately $280,000 plus add-ons of approximately $51,000 on top of the $280,000. Again, not $1 allotted to the smaller historic house. Note, no dollars allowed to install public water, sewage, and many other emissions. Not completely thought through. Seems as if to show only the lowest dollar amount to be seen all day. Is there really a committee? I must question at this point. An official committee. The point is, a proper committee made up of not just like-minded residents, but also some members who understand construction, restoration, bid process, and costs of future maintenance and responsibilities should be assembled and decide what should and should not be done with this property. There are many wishes and things that can be done. However, what can we afford? Not only to refurbish, but also what can we afford to properly maintain into the future? Every time we take on a new cost, it means there is less money for existing committed programs. Grants are great. However, most require the township to match a percentage. What happens during turn down in the economy and grants dry up? The residents are going to have to make up the difference in monies through tax increases. In conclusion, we cannot just throw money at an old house and hope it will solve the needs. The great example of this in the township is the existing police station. That's exactly what happened there many years ago in the early 90s. And the mess we've had over the years, it was never right. Careful planning and costing are required as not to waste public monies. Public money should be treated and spent as if it were your own. Those are the comments I have. Zach, is there anybody in the public for comments on this issue?
1 second, Phil. There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, poll the board.
Commissioner Warren,
Absolute aye.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
No.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Attia,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye, and President Ginder.
No.
Resolution passes 5 ayes, 2 nays.
Under other, motion to approve the reappointment of Joseph Wilfinger to the Recreation Commission Historical Society. Term to expire on 9/30/2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion. Fisher.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, God.
D.
Who was the second?
Is that you, Commissioner D, that seconded it?
I tried to. Yes.
Okay, everybody was talking, yeah, so.
Comments from the board? Comments from the public? There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Ati,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner
Yes.
and President Ginder. President Ginder,
Yes.
motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion to approve the reappointment of Robert Miller to the Recreation Commission Board Club, term to expire on 9/30/2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do we have a second?
Tia, I'll second.
Comments from the board?
Reiterate what Mick said last week. These last two gentlemen are great assets to the community, and I strongly support their reappointments.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public?
There are none.
Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Warren. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Aye.
D,
Aye.
and Ginder.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion to approve the reappointment of John Kelly to the Recreation Commission, term to expire on 9/30/2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'm
second.
sorry, couldn't hear anybody.
Who made the
Who made
first?
the motion?
Marks.
Second.
And then D?
D.
D, okay.
Discussion from the board. Any discussion from the board? Comments from the public?
There are none.
There being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
President Ginder.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion to approve the reappointment of Elizabeth Fox to the Recreation Commission, term to expire 9/30/2023. Do we have a motion?
I'll move Sloniker.
Do I have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Comments from the board?
Yeah, I've won Commissioner D. I just want to reiterate, I know I said it last week, but I just want to thank Liz and John Kelly and Bobby Miller and Joe Wolfinger, everything that they do for the township. They volunteer their time. I work with these people on the rec commission, and they all do a great job. And I know in the past, Commissioner Fisher, several months ago, talked about volunteerism, and now we just have a lack of volunteers. And here's fine examples of people who step up and they do a wonderful job. So hopefully more people volunteer. We have openings in other commissions. I think on Parks and Rec there's one, but I just want to take the time to thank them for their dedication to the township. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
There are none.
Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Atia,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
President Ginder.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion to endorse the Bureau of Planning, Zoning and Development Local Property Manager Guide. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion. Fisher.
I have a second.
I'll second Marks.
Comments from the board?
Yeah, I just want to thank Lee for generating that document. I think it's going to be very helpful to any property owners, any property managers, and great work.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that Joe took the words out of my mouth, that it's, I've read it at L&L and I thought it was a very good document and I think it'll be extremely useful to the township. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
I agree. Thanks, Lee.
Go ahead, say thank you again.
Any other comments from the board? No. Right, I'm sorry. Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public, Zach?
There are none.
Being none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner D,
Aye.
President Ginder.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion number 6, to approve the Walmart settlement of overnight truck traffic parking litigation. I'm going to ask for a first and a second on this so we can open up for discussion. And at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Gross to explain this, as we do not have paperwork. This all came about pretty quick. So I have a motion.
Motion.
Who was that?
I'll make a motion, D.
Do I have a second?
Atia. I'll second.
Attorney Gross, would you please take over and explain, please?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. If you recall, there was a matter involving overnight parking with Walmart. That matter had progressed in litigation, and there's a proposed settlement. Chris Ginger was on earlier. I don't see that he's still on now, but Chris, together with Sam Cohen from my office, were able to negotiate a settlement that I believe Chris is very supportive of. Involves a $5,000 payment from Walmart, and most importantly, a process between Chris and Walmart to ensure there aren't future problems regarding this matter. We don't have the final paperwork yet. Those are the material terms of the settlement. And in order to bring this to a resolution, we're asking that you consider the motion tonight to authorize it based on those terms.
Comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a question for Attorney Gross, or maybe Lee, you can answer this. I was at Walmart yesterday on the property, and there was a T-Mobile truck and a tent set up in the parking lot area. Is that allowable on, I guess that's private property, but because it's a public parking lot, is that allowable without a permit, or do they have a permit?
I don't believe that they have a permit. I mean, if it's something accessory to what they're operating out of the store, I guess they could. If it's not in needed or required parking spaces, but you're not the only one that said that. I wasn't aware of it. I know Chris is on. He was on. I don't know if he was aware of anything with it. But this may be a settlement with Walmart, and Chris did a lot of work being the zoning officer and being the zoning officer. This started with our enforcement action against all these big truck parking issues that we have all over the township. The only time Walmart gave us any time of day was when we had a judgment from the district magistrate in excess of $10,000 awarded. And that's when they started to take it seriously and do some proactive measures of stopping the truck parking. Do I think this will be the end of it? Probably not. Was it painful for them to get to this point? Yeah, probably a little, but it's going to be an ongoing process with that property.
Now,
and Chris is on to answer any other questions about the terms of the litigation or settlement. I'm not aware of the tent situation, but we'll look into that. I know there was talk about them having a COVID testing site there. I don't know if what was involved. It's the T-Mobile component that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, this was a hot pink truck, and they had a tent not attached to the truck, but in the parking lot area, and it was fully displayed. It was a T-Mobile truck, fully displayed, and they had customers just roaming the parking lot, and I was surprised by that.
Well, T-Mobile is probably trying to trump up attention. They are going to be one of the tenants in the building that's being constructed right now up by the Burger King. It's Smoothie King and T-Mobile, so maybe this was a marketing thing with them. I'm not familiar if T-Mobile has some kind of relationship with Walmart. I know they have Family Mobile through Walmart, but I don't know about the rest of it. But like Chris said, I mean, we'll follow up on it.
Has there been a reduction in the amount of trucks parking overnight at the Home Depot? Because I see less than I did earlier this year. I don't know if citations have bared that out or not.
We've not had complaints about Home Depot recently in that regard, and nor have we had those complaints about Walmart recently.
But you're not mentioning, Chris, that we got judgment too against Home Depot, which I don't think they even know yet.
Yeah, I think we're a little ahead of the curve with Walmart compared to Home Depot in that respect.
Yeah, but we did get judgment against Home Depot, but Home Depot's so huge, their corporate probably doesn't even know it yet.
I'm sure they don't.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. It's just something that I normally see on the weekends, and there's been a lot less trucks parked out there in the front there, so.
Chris is on it.
Any other comments from the board? Zach, any comments from the public on this?
There was one comment from Edward Hosa. I could unmute him now.
You want to send them through?
Good evening, commissioners. Actually, I witnessed the T-Mobile RV and tent set up at Foreman Mills last week. So that T-Mobile RV and tent is roving through the township through commercial property.
Thanks, Ed. Any other comments from the public?
There are no others.
There being no others, Commissioner Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner D.
Aye.
Commissioner Attia.
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker. Aye. Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
And President Ginder.
Yes.
The motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Number 7, discussion, rezoning of township property along West Columbia and MacArthur Roads from R1 to C2A. I believe, Mayor, Mike, this is yours.
Yep. Yes, and this process, I think, went back to the days of a former mayor back in the middle 90s, Glenn Saltz. My understanding was that he had hoped to do exactly this. And in evaluating the properties over the years, it seemed to me that the property at West Columbia and MacArthur Road, currently zoned R1, would be an appropriate location because of its adjacence to an industrial site where the warehouse is being built on the northern end of it would be at the quarry, and on the MacArthur Road side, actually I should say to the south, it's a C2A property designation, and I think that this would be an excellent site and a candidate for the township to rezone so that we can sell the property. We haven't done anything with it in 40 years, and I think it's a reasonable process to undertake right now to change it from R1 to some other designation. Currently, I believe C2A is the appropriate zoning. I think it'll attract some potential revenue bearing and a very good income stream for us as opposed to the corn and soybeans that are there now. We've had discussions, and I know it's gone back to the first time I was in office, for us to evaluate properties. And this is the first one that I think we should be making a change to.
Any comments from the board on this? Any comments from the board?
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Where's the beef?
Okay. No, I want to just make a comment. I remember when Glenn wanted to go ahead and have this rezoned, and the commissioners at that time were fearing over commercialization or whatnot. But what I think they failed to see is where it's located. You're not going to get too many people that want to build houses right near this big quarry and whatnot. So to me, the best thing at that time would have been something along the industrial or commercial or whatnot type of zoning. So that would put that land to best use right there. And we could make some tax dollars generated by it rather than just at one time a pumpkin patch.
How many acres of land is that?
To be honest, I don't have that number in my head. I want to say 17, more than that. Lee, do you have that in your head right now?
I knew you were going to say that, but no, I don't.
Has there ever been any interest at all in like putting housing in there, or has it only ever been commercial interest?
Definitely only commercial interest to my knowledge.
That's why prior with the past township executive, when he brought that up, like I said, you look at the best utilization of that land where it's located and whatnot, it would be kind of foolish to put regular housing on just because of the proximity to the quarry. I mean, that quarry isn't something gradual, it's cliff. And also its proximity to the MacArthur Road access and all, so.
The actual acreage of that is 31.672 acres.
I can tell the board that when we went through the zoning ordinance update in 1991, there was an interest at that time, a serious interest to limit commercial development and slow it down and to limit the commercial corridors. And so any property that was not already developed for those uses or properties that were owned by the township, if they could be zoned residentially to bump up the ratio of residential zoning in relation to commercial zoning, that's what we did. And that's why, you know, I think everybody acknowledges that this property is not prime residential property, but because there was parkland adjacent to it, it was an easy add to make the residential numbers go up. And that's exactly what it was. If you remember, you know, it was stopover development. We were where you see these other communities, Bethlehem Township, Forks Township, all these other ones that are exploding, that were exploding commercially. That's where we were when we did that. So there was a real interest in upping the residential percentages. And so that's why we did that. And now I feel old.
What sort of commercial facility might go in there has been talked about. Would this be a warehouse? Could this be something industrial? Has there been discussion about what could go there?
The C2A designation would give it a opportunity to have more local and community commercial things. I think the largest thing you would have commercially would be about 20,000 feet, which is pretty darn big. And I think it would attract a lot of attention. There are lots of interest along MacArthur Road, but in many instances, it just doesn't have the right zoning, or there's some potential problems with the properties. This one, I think, is ripe for development, and I think it's reasonable for us to do that as opposed to sell it to put houses on there when we have the noise from trucks probably 24 hours a day and commercial development right on top of it.
Thank you.
Does the designation open it up to either or both? Warehousing versus light industrial? I'm just thinking of job creation, and warehouses don't often create a lot of jobs for the lost land that they create and the impervious cover. But if a number of businesses do create better paying, family sustaining jobs, that might be a plus over a warehouse if this was ever rezoned.
It doesn't permit warehousing or distribution, Jeff. That C2A was meant to be a buffer, you know, between, you have your C1 district, you have your C2A district, and then you have C2. C2 is the heaviest commercial, C1's the lightest commercial. This was in between. And since it's budding industrial and basically park, you know, it's kind of this, it's natural. You know, this, you know, having something between the industrial and the other areas. It's not as heavy as C2, but it's also not, you know, as neighborhood as C1. But it's not industrial, no.
The other thing too, is Frank here, is that the police gun range borders this property too, or at the end of it. Not conducive to residential.
Great. Thank you, Lee. Thank you.
The nature of the slope on this also prohibits significant intrusion onto the parkway because the higher walls of the quarry on the north side shield it.
Property and the wish to maybe look to sell it. This will not affect the township ownership of the police gun range, will it?
No.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
Mr. Hose, I had a question for Lee about what the corner lot is zoned with a white block building.
Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, Zach asked the question already. That was the question. We do not own to the corner. There is another property owner that owns the corner.
That's correct.
And what is that property zone? Do we know?
It's zone C2A.
Thank you, Lee.
There you go.
And that property, that building is in horrible shape. The roof is half collapsed on it.
That's
They
correct.
should be required to either demolish the building or do something with it, whoever owns that property. Any other comments from the board? There being none, Mr. Mayor, Mike, what's the next step on this then that you wish to take?
Excuse me?
What's the next step you wish to take on this property? I think it probably would be helpful if the Board of Commissioners were somehow to get some type of decent map of this area so that they know exactly what property they're looking at and where the boundaries are. Over.
Okay, we can do that. And we would presume that we would either have it for a first hearing in November and potentially a second in December, or this could be expanded out to January because we have to get our approval from, well, advice from the local and the Lehigh Valley Planning Commissions.
And the other comment would be a concern. I'm not sure of this, but there's been talk over the years that when the Cameron track fills up, they may be looking at the quarry up there as the next successor to the Cameron track.
John has talked about that, and
That we make sure we have proper access if that's going to be the next Cameron track, so to speak.
we're looking at that access, and of course the initial look was to get it off of South Church Street, but it's such a long run from there. I just didn't think it was going to make as much sense as some potential other options. And right now, I think John is saying, you know, we have maybe as little as 5 years, maybe as much as 10 or a bit more than that. But that's something that that's been on John's mind, and it makes sense to me.
Well, we need to think about that, and as usual, John's a step ahead of the game.
Yep.
It's just, you know, that these things are marked and that the board understands, you know, the forward plans and the needs for these things and a good visual of what is exactly there.
Okay.
Anybody else have a comment on this before we close it off for the evening?
There's nothing from the public.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there's nothing from the public.
Okay. The last discussion item is not printed. It's kind of left over from the workshop meeting for budget hearing nights. We had talked about the 27th, 28th, and 29th of October. That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The mayor and the rec director, Tony Coca, have checked in to use of the Shad Avenue Playground building. That's the largest area there is in the playground buildings. We can have it in there. We're allowed a maximum of 50 people in there under the governor's guidelines. We never get near that many people, so we can spread out, require masks, and do all the other things that we should be doing. Does the board want to discuss those 3 dates or move on with them?
I'm good with those. Commissioner Fisher.
Is there anybody, probably easier to do this, between the Board of Commissioners and staff and administration, is there anybody who is not okay with those 3 dates? Now, bear in mind, we may be able to get through the budget in 2 nights. I prefer to have the 3rd night there because just because I think there's going to be some discussion with money being so tight, that at least we have the 3rd night there. If we don't need it, we don't have to use it. If I don't hear any negative comments to this, I guess, Mr. Mayor, we can advertise this as those are the 3 nights for the budget hearings.
Okay. 27th, 28th, and 29th of October.
That's correct, and we'll leave that up to you and Jack as to what time you want to start and what nights we do what. Any other questions on the budget hearing nights? From there, we'll go to reports of public officials, starting on the Board of Commissioners. Mr. Fisher, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. I just want to say a few things. I saw that the township has posted the Halloween guidelines that the township is not sanctioning Halloween trick-or-treating this year. I just want to say I agree with the township. I'll be fully honest, this whole situation has kind of broken my heart. I've always been a big fan of Halloween trick-or-treating. I just think this is just the way the world has come. I will not be participating. I will not be going out, or I will not be having my porch light on. As the guidelines said on the township website, if people want to do it, that's their decision. But and if you do choose to do it as safely as possible. There's nothing we can really do to stop it, but this is your prerogative. I just hope that I was looking at the cases tonight, nationwide hospitalizations are going up, cases are going up in Pennsylvania. We got 2 big major holidays coming up in November and December, and I'm hoping that those don't have to be canceled either. So everyone just use common sense, exercise good judgment. The last thing I want to say, get your flu shots. My wife and I got ours 2 weeks ago. They are available. You can get them at drugstores, Target, CVS, your local pharmacy, your local doctor. We got ours, and we always talk about not wanting to have a twindemic with flu and COVID because both of the symptoms do overlap. So if there's ways we can take stress off the healthcare system right now, please get your flu shots, everyone. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner D.
All right, I'm gonna have to put my public safety officer's hat on again. Folks, enough with the running of the school bus lights. I witnessed it on Thursday. I'm not a big Facebook user, but I happen to be on Facebook, and I believe it's a Whitehall Copley School District bus driver saying that in Orchard, it happens all the time. People run the stop signs, they run the bus lights. And again, I witnessed it myself. So I made a little visual aid here. Hopefully everybody can see this. It's a T street. I think you can see it there. If the bus is here, you must stop. I don't know why people think you can just blow through here when the bus is stopped with the lights on and children getting on the bus. And somebody went flying right down, no regard to the bus lights. And it's very disturbing. And I know that it happens all over Whitehall. I don't understand, but listen, we're all in a hurry in the morning trying to get to work. But between the hours of 6:45 and 7:30, the buses are out there, folks. You know that. So just maybe assume that you might get stuck behind a bus. If you're late, that's your problem. But please don't put our children, our students in jeopardy because you're late for work. That's not fair and it's not right. And I'd hate for there to be serious tragedy. There have been, in my TV news days, I had to cover one down in Philadelphia where a child was hit and killed by a car. Please stay off the phones, concentrate. Know there's buses out there. Please, if you see again, assume there's a bus somewhere you're going to pass or get stuck behind. Please slow down, be careful, keep our kids safe. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Warren?
Two quick things. One, while we have Chris Gettinger on the line, we talked about the business southern part of MacArthur Road. I don't know. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes there's a lot of garbage around those businesses down there. I don't know if it's just because of the northern businesses have somebody that walks out every day and cleans up their storefronts and their gutters. But there's two businesses down on the southern end of MacArthur Road that you go down there and there's just trash blown along the tree line. The gutters, there's trash in the gutters in some areas. And I just don't know how we encourage businesses just to clean up their little stoop in front of their place. I think everybody would appreciate it, and it's better for their customers. And then also, I just want to note that last week was Fire Prevention Week. I know our fire department likes to get into the schools, and this year's been certainly different. But families can have a conversation with their kids so they know a way out if there is ever a problem. I think it's a testament to Bobby Benner, who set up the fire training for our students. I know when my kids went through it, they talked about it when they came home. So it does have impact. So thank you for your time.
Commissioner Attia.
Thanks, Phil. I do want to second Commissioner D's comments on the bus issue. I know that there's a few residents. I live right off of Orchard, and there's a few neighbors that have mentioned that as well. That was a great illustration, by the way, to Commissioner D. But I did want to just share some comments. While I did vote tonight to approve the grant application for the farm and all the talk of grant money for the farm, and it just had me reflecting a little bit on what we're placing value on as a township. Our historical properties definitely matter. However, I want to remind us all that are here tonight that our future also matters, and I'm referring to the young people of the township. I'm challenging everyone here, myself included, to continue to keep in mind and do all we can for the young people of our township and what we can do to provide more opportunities for them. After talking with Tony Coca earlier, we did learn that this winter it sounds like we will not have any space to begin winter indoor sports for our youth teams in the township due to the school district not allowing outside organizations to rent space during the pandemic. I know that these are not the best of financial times to build a recreation center. However, all my life growing up in Whitehall, I felt like the township and its youth deserves one. Even if it's not a rec center, but I think we all need to keep in mind the true investment we really do make when we invest back in our youth and recreation. Just a week ago, a young man, a high school student from our township, was killed. My thoughts and prayers are with that young man's family. And earlier this week, 2 youth came through our neighborhood in Fullerton and were shooting BB guns that broke a resident's window. Those 2 young men were eventually picked up by Whitehall Police Department as well. I just want us to please keep in mind and always keep in mind the importance of providing positive and healthy opportunities for our young people. As an educator, I can't stress it enough. I think that it's something we all need to continue to keep in mind here in the township. Thank you.
That's a great challenge, Randy. Great challenge. One of the best I've heard in a long time. Commissioner Sloniger.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. On one of my excursions to see what kind of litter was on the sidewalks and the roadways and whatnot, when I went down to the Home Depot, the land from the Jordan Creek to their parking lot, is there anybody down there that cuts that grass down there? And the only reason I say it is because I was amazed that there were 3 deer walking and I can only see their heads when they were walking through. This was closest to the creek, and I don't. And there's not barriers, but there's some kind of line that runs up along, and it looks like the grass was cut up to there, but from that line on to the creek side, it was just high grass. So I don't know who takes care of that or whatnot, but something that if it's Allentown's because it's their park, that maybe they should be told to get down there and attend to it. That's all.
Excuse me, Tom, is that what you mean next to Home Depot's parking lot?
That is correct, yes.
That's township property, and I believe there were certain plantings put in there with the Jordan Greenway that are not typical, just, grass that you cut. I think.
And again, the only reason that I even observed that it was that high, like I said, I just saw the deer's heads and I went, we don't have pygmy deer here. So, they had some size to them, and I wasn't ready to see that. That's what stood out in my head. So
I think it's intentional that it's not going to be like a lawn. I believe that the plantings are different, and I think that the intention is for it to grow up a little bit more than what you're used to.
And that's
it's a
fine.
riparian buffer.
No, and I understand what you're saying. It's just that I wasn't aware of that. That's what I'm saying. There's like stakes, and then there's line, and it looked like the grass was cut up to there. But the only reason I was unaware that we have something, if you're saying that was done on purpose, is that access to the creek itself for fishing and whatnot for people. Again, I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
Hey, Tom, Frank here. That's part of the Jordan Greenway project. They're trying to establish a riparian buffer in that floodplain, and they're only going to mow paths in several places to get down to the creek for fishing.
Fine. Again, just trying to find out.
Yep, it's all on purpose. They have a lot of saplings growing in there too. They lost some in the last flood, but they recovered them and replanted them.
Go ahead, Bill.
Y'all done, Tom?
Yeah.
Commissioner Marks?
I have nothing.
And I have nothing. Mayor's report.
Couple of things to discuss. I've been meeting, and in one instance, along with President Ginder, to discuss, along with our solicitor, would pick the proposal to create a general purpose authority, and we continue to evaluate the propriety of creating that authority. It's a 50-year process that we open ourselves up to. There's one more meeting to be had with a community smaller than us who actually has a general purpose authority that is marketing its potential resources, I guess, to bring in some money to the community. We're going to continue to look at that, and I think the evaluation that we'll have before the L&L committee meeting on the November meeting will give the board better information about what we should expect should we decide to go forward with that general authority. Interestingly, I visited a company called Cryoscience. They are in one of the Sherman properties down on Front Street in Fullerton, actually the last place before you would bump into Route 22. It's a Polish company. We are their national headquarters right now. Whitehall is the national headquarters for Cryoscience, and they have contracts with quite a few NFL, NBA, and professional baseball and hockey organizations. What they do is sell equipment that athletes right now, mostly upper level athletes, equipment that allows them to lower their body temperature significantly after working out in an attempt to limit injuries and inflammation. And it got me in there. It went down to 196 degrees below freezing, and that was about all I could take. It was in 3 minutes they got it down there, maybe 4. But this is a national movement in particularly the professional world right now. So I thought it was kind of interesting that we have their national headquarters here. Verizon has been giving us information. They want to plant their 5G communication devices on poles in the township, and that's moving forward. Getting a lot done there, looking at agreements and negotiating with Verizon on that. We also had a long meeting with a state representative of the RCAP program relative to the $1 million grant that we have. And they are helping us through the process to guarantee that that gets done effectively. Jack and other staff members were involved with that meeting also. Lots of meetings going on with the building progress, and Jack and Debbie, along with many other people, are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that. Things are moving along great here. Right now, I understand that our building is about on the initial schedule that we have projected it to be back when we first started the building before we lost that 6 weeks. So there's a lot going on here in spite of the pandemic. And honestly, right now, I'm getting very few, and I don't know if the board are getting any real complaints from people about the building being closed. Is anybody out, any of the seven of you hearing anything negative about the board or the building being closed right now? I'm not
hearing anything about that, but I'm hearing about Fulton Bank being closed, their branch in Whitehall, the end of the year.
Yeah, that's well, Jack, maybe you want to chime in on that point.
Well, no, they've just
Jack, yeah, go ahead.
They've just made the township aware of that, and presently our purchasing agent Lenore is drafting requests for proposals for banking services, so that might be going out yet before the end of the year, because we are going to be losing them as our depository, since their closest area for the township would be on Hamilton Street. So that's a non-starter.
Okay. Phil, I would like to apologize to you and the board. If anything was done secretly, it wasn't done intentionally so. And I hope that I can become a better communicator, and hope that we don't have that problem again. Okay, that's about it for right now.
Treasurer's report. I don't know if the treasurer's on tonight.
She was.
I am here. Does anyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I want to let you know the September Treasurer's report will be completed, I'm sure, by tomorrow, and I will be mailing them out to all members of the board. I also had a virtual conference this week along with our business privilege clerk that I think will be very useful to us here in the tax office and to the township in general. They spoke a lot about the impact that COVID will have on the business privilege collections for next year. And they gave us some good ideas to help with that. One of them would be to have our current clerks go out into the community to see if we are getting every business that is in the community. Most municipalities have more than one person involved in their BP department, so they're able to do that. But we are very fortunate with our current clerk. She's all for it. She's all about it. She wants to go out and see who's out there who isn't paying their fair share. So it was a very, very worthwhile conference. And I that's about it for me, but I would like to say something to the mayor concerning that business on Front Street that you just spoke about. Might be really nice if you share that information with your nephew. He might be interested.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Otherwise, everybody have a good week.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to go over tonight?
I just want to for all my kudos that they are finally in the business privilege area going to conferences, so you learn how to pick up some of these excess monies that are out there that we don't know about, you know, and that thing of going out, finding the businesses that are not registered or whatnot, that it's something that the conferences do. They cost a few dollars and very few dollars for what you can potentially gain. I've been pushing that ever since I left the treasurer's office, and the person that collected the taxes in there on that position refused to do that kind of work. So just saying thanks.
This clerk is awesome. This clerk is awesome. She is all about really doing the job. She really is. Tom, I sincerely would like to have you especially speak with her and give her some ideas other than what we got at this conference, because she's all about doing what needs to be done. Unlike the last one, which you did point out, this one is really good. So I'd like to have you meet her.
Okay. You know, we'll try to set something up then.
Okay, great.
Can I, Phil, can I just?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Treasurer, I think she should hire our development director part-time, because she's online figuring out who has Airbnb and VRBO houses. And she's always after that.
Well, that would be a good idea. This one here, she's excellent. Can't say enough good about her.
Maybe I'm just looking for vacation hotspots.
Any other comments? If none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion, Fisher.
Do we have a second? Motion, okay. Meeting adjourned. Everybody be safe.
Have a good night, everyone.
Zach, thank you for all your help.
Absolutely. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.